So let's start with the role of macronutrients. So in the macronutrients, the first one which I will be dealing here, that is nitrogen. Now nitrogen is required by the plant in large amount, or I can say it is required by the plant in the largest amount. Nitrogen, it is mainly absorbed by the plant in the form of nitrate ions. यहाँ पर हम स्टडी कर लेते हैं कि ये जो नाइट्रोजन है इसके क्या क्या फंक्शंस है. इट इज कंपोनेंट्स ऑफ विच इंपॉर्टेंट बायोमॉलिक्यूल्स प्रेजेंट इन द सेल. नाइट्रोजन, वन, इट इज द कंपोनेंट ऑफ प्रोटीन्स. Then nitrogenous bases, which results in the formation of the nucleotide, which in turn results in the formation of nucleic acid, that is DNA and RNA. So nitrogen, it is constituent of DNA and RNA. Along with that, constituent of several vitamins as well as hormones. So I will be citing one example of plant hormone which contain nitrogen, that is cytokinin. Nitrogen is very important element. This element is required by the cells which are actively involved in cell division. So you can say that this element is required by the meristematic tissues. It is required by the metabolically active cells. So after the nitrogen, I will be dealing with the second critical element, that is phosphorus. Now phosphorus, it is absorbed from the soil by the plant in the form of the phosphate ions, that is H2PO4 minus or HPO4 minus 2, means it can be absorbed in the form of the monovalent or divalent ion, right? Now let's see what are the important functions, what are the role of. So let's see. One second. It is absorbed from the soil in the form of phosphate ions, that is HPO4 2 minus, and H2PO4 minus means it is absorbed from the soil by the plants in the form of the divalent as well as monovalent ions. Now let's see what are the important functions associated with this critical element. Phosphorus, one, it is component of nucleic acids, DNA and RNA. So you might be knowing DNA and RNA के अंदर बनता है phosphodiester bond. Along with that, it is component of cell membrane. Cell membrane के अंदर it is component of phospholipids. Now after the phosphorus, next critical element, that is potassium. Potassium, it is absorbed by the plant from the soil in the form of potassium ions. अब एक इंपॉर्टेंट फंक्शन पोटेशियम का जो हम प्रीवियस चैप्टर के अंदर डिस्कस कर चुके हैं, दैट द पोटेशियम आयंस दे आर इन्वॉल्व्ड इन मेंटेनिंग cation anion balance in these cells. Yes, so involved in maintaining cation anion balance in the cell. Potassium ions, they helps in the closing, opening and closing of stomata. Maintains turgidity of cell. पोटेशियम अब है तो एक मैक्रो एलिमेंट. अब जो मैक्रो एलिमेंट्स है उनका सेकेंडरी रोल होता है एंजाइम एक्टिवेशन के अंदर, बट पोटेशियम एक ऐसा मैक्रो एलिमेंट है विच हैज द एबिलिटी टू एक्टिवेट 40 types of enzymes. So 40 enzymes can be activated by the potassium, and just like the nitrogen, potassium, it is also very much important. It is required in the meristematic tissues as well as buds, leaves and root tips, right? Now after the potassium I will be discussing next macro element, that is calcium. Calcium is absorbed by the plant in the form of calcium ions. Now calcium is required by the cell for the purpose of cell division, और cell division के अंदर जो calcium है, one, it is involved in the formation of spindle fibers. Spindle formation. Second one, calcium, it is part of middle lamella. So you know it very well, middle lamella, it is a cementing layer between the two plant cells. मिडल लैमेला के अंदर दो कंपोनेंट्स प्रेजेंट होते हैं, वन इज कैल्शियम पैक्टेट and the another one that is magnesium pactate. Now along with that, calcium is also required by the meristematic tissues as well as differentiated tissues. तो कैल्शियम के बाद अब जो नेक्स्ट मैक्रोन्यूट्रिएंट यहां पर हम स्टडी करेंगे, दैट इज सल्फर. So now next macronutrient, that is sulfur. Sulfur is absorbed in the form of sulfate ions. Now sulfur is component of amino acid. So I am writing the name of two amino acid which contains sulfur. One is cysteine. The another one, that is methionine. अमाइनो एसिड का पार्ट है, इसके साथ साथ सल्फर इज ऑल्सो पार्ट ऑफ कोएंजाइम्स. सो आई एम राइटिंग द नेम ऑफ कोएंजाइम. देयर इज प्रेजेंस ऑफ सल्फर, दैट इज कोएंजाइम ए. तो ये जो कोएंजाइम ए है, ये हम पढ़ेंगे इसकी इंपॉर्टेंस, इसकी इन्वॉल्वमेंट रेस्पिरेशन के अंदर. नाउ नेक्स्ट वन, इट इज पार्ट ऑफ विटामिन्स लाइक बायोटिन and thymine. Now this thymine, it should not be confused with this one, right? ये जो मैंने यहां पर बताया थाइमिन, दिस इज अ विटामिन जिसके अंदर प्रेजेंट है सल्फर, एंड दिस थाइमिन, दिस इज अ नाइट्रोजनस बेस. इट कंटेन्स नाइट्रोजन एंड दिस थाइमिन, इट रिजल्ट्स इन द फॉर्मेशन ऑफ DNA. Yes, it results in the formation of nucleotide which polymerizes to form DNA. Next, sulfur, it is part of electron carriers. It is part of the electron carrier, constituent of electron carriers which are involved in the ETS. So it's very well known to you what is ETS, that is electron transport system. So one example for that is ferrotoxin. Ferrotoxin के अंदर सल्फर प्रेजेंट है, along with the sulfur there is also presence of iron. Now the last macronutrient which I will be dealing here, that is magnesium. Absorbed in the form of magnesium ions. Now magnesium is a macro element, again just like the potassium, it is also involved in the activation of enzyme. Magnesium is involved in the activation of enzymes which are part of photosynthesis, which are involved in photosynthesis as well as respiration. I had discussed this earlier कि photosynthesis के अंदर दो enzymes, they are activated by magnesium which are carbon dioxide fixing enzyme, that is Rubisco, and the another one that is Pepco. Also involved in the synthesis of DNA and RNA. It is part of chlorophyll. Yes, magnesium, it is part of chlorophyll. Chlorophyll के अंदर दो parts present होते हैं. Yes, two parts are there. One is ring structure, that is known as head, and the another one that is tail. और जो magnesium है, that is present in the center of the ring. So we can say that it is part of head. Next one, magnesium, it is involved in maintaining the ribosome structure. तो राइबोसोम के अंदर आपको मालूम है दो सब यूनिट्स प्रेजेंट होती हैं, एक स्मॉलर और एक लार्जर सब यूनिट. स्मॉलर और लार्जर सब यूनिट को ज्वाइन करने के लिए हेल्प करेंगे मैग्नीशियम आयंस. आई हैड डिस्कस्ड दिस इन द सेल साइकिल दैट 1 to 2 millimolar concentration of magnesium ions that is required for the joining of two subunits. So smaller or larger subunit को join करने के लिए there is requirement of this much concentration of magnesium ions. So this was all about the macronutrients. After the macronutrients, now I will be started with the macro one. So now let's start with the role of micronutrients. In the micronutrients, first of all, I will be dealing with iron. Now, iron, it is absorbed by the plant mainly in the form of ferric ions. अब आयरन के क्या क्या फंक्शंस है सेल के अंदर, उसको हम यहाँ पर डिस्कस कर लेते हैं. Now the iron is involved in the synthesis of chlorophyll. तो chlorophyll के अंदर synthesis के अंदर जो enzymes required है, इन enzymes की activation के लिए iron involved है. So the first function, that is chlorophyll synthesis. Second one, it is involved in the activation of enzyme, that is catalase. Very important function. Iron, it is part of electron carriers which are involved in the electron transport system. तो एक electron carrier का नाम तो यहीं पर अभी बताया मैंने, that is ferredoxin. And the another one, that is cytochrome. So now coming to the next micronutrient, that is manganese. Manganese absorbed by the plant in the form of the magnesines. Now the best defined function of manganese is that it is involved in the water splitting step. It is involved in the water splitting step in photosynthesis. So you know that in the photosynthesis there are two phases, that is the light phase and in dark phase. Light phase के अंदर water का breakdown होगा in the presence of light, that is photolysis of water is there, and in the photolysis of water there is involvement of manganese. So one function involved in the water splitting step of photosynthesis. Now next one, it activates several enzymes of photosynthesis, respiration as well as nitrogen metabolism. So involved in the activation of enzymes of photosynthesis, respiration and nitrogen metabolism. Now after this, I will be starting with the zinc. Absorbed by the plant from the soil in the form of zinc ions. One important function of zinc is that it is involved in the synthesis of ऑक्सिन. ऑक्सिन सिंथेसिस में इन्वॉल्व है. ऑक्सिन सिंथेसिस में कैसे इन्वॉल्व है? क्योंकि ऑक्सिन सिंथेसिस के लिए एक सबस्ट्रेट रिक्वायर्ड है, दैट इज ट्रिप्टोफैन, और ट्रिप्टोफैन बनाने के लिए जिंक की इन्वॉल्वमेंट है. सो वन वी कैन राइट हियर, इट इज इन्वॉल्व इन द ऑक्सिन सिंथेसिस, दैट इज अ प्लांट ग्रोथ हार्मोन. Zinc, it is activator of several enzyme. Micronutrients है, आपको मालूम ही है, micronutrients primary function is enzyme activation. They are involved in the activation of carboxylases as well as alcohol dehydrogenase. तो dehydrogenase को represent करने के लिए I will be writing DH. So now next micronutrient which I will be dealing here, that is boron. So now next one, that is copper. Absorbed in the form of cupric ions. Now copper, it is involved in the electron transport system because it is part of electron carriers. So I am writing the name of the electron carriers. One is cytochrome oxidase. and the another one that is plastocyanin. साइटोक्रोम ऑक्सीडेज के इन्वॉल्वमेंट हम पढ़ेंगे when we will be dealing with the respiration, when I will be dealing with the respiration. और plastocyanin, it works like a electron carrier in the photosynthetic ETS. तो इसका रोल पढ़ेंगे respiration के अंदर और इसका photosynthesis के अंदर. Along with that, this copper, it is involved in the overall plant growth, overall plant metabolism. Next one now, molybdenum. Now molybdenum, it is absorbed in the form of the molybdate ions. Involved in nitrogen metabolism. नाइट्रोजन मेटाबॉलिज्म के अंदर इन्वॉल्व है. नाइट्रोजन मेटाबॉलिज्म के अंदर टू मेन एंजाइम्स हैं जिसका कंपोनेंट है मोलिब्डेनम. वन इज नाइट्रोजन फिक्सिंग एंजाइम, दैट इज नाइट्रोजनेज, एंड द सेकंड वन दैट इज नाइट्रेट रिडक्टेज. नेक्स्ट वन दैट इज बोरॉन. Absorbed by the plant from the soil in the form of the borate ions. Now several important functions they are associated with the boron. One is that it is involved in pollen germination, pollen tube growth. Next, it is involved in the metabolism. It is involved in the absorption and release of calcium ions. Then इसके साथ साथ बोरॉन कार्बोहाइड्रेट ट्रांसलोकेशन में इन्वॉल्व है. That is, it is involved in the sugar transport, involved in cell elongation, as well as cell differentiation. Now the last micronutrient which I will be dealing here, that is chlorine. Absorbed from the soil in the form of chloride ions. Now just like the manganese, one function of chlorine is that it is involved in the water splitting step of photosynthesis, that is photolysis of water. Now second function that it helps in determining solute concentration in cell. So this was all about the role of the macro as well as micronutrients. Now next topic which I will be starting here, that is deficiency symptoms associated with them.